Gentlemen, I'm very pleased that we're having this conversation today about high performance sport. It's something that you both live and breathe in your roles, both, you know, private sector, business, and government. So I think I might start with government. So I'm going to start with Abhinav. But of course, I want to touch with both of you because I know you've both been in Melbourne fairly recently as well. Um, but firstly, Abhinav, we know the EU government has very much revamped uh, in sports policies. Initiatives like the Kelo India receiving increased focus on funding. I wanted to ask you how these policies, and the changes, how are they transforming India's high performance sports landscape? What do you foresee in the coming years?
First of all, thank you for having me here. Uh, Particularly, Khelo India team has been one of the world's largest sports for development schemes. And from where we began in 2017, I think we've reached a number which is too big for us to analyze, to be honest, at times. From the number of athletes we've had in the past, we identified from the grassroots, and there have been around more than 40 odd athletes who have reached the Olympics, Paris Olympics, if I talk about, from grassroots to the podium. And not the podium, I would say, I'm so sorry, we missed the podium very closely on most occasions, but to the place where we are about to be on the podium, what I meant. Uh, One of the saddest things that or rather the numbers I pick up, if you've heard of Kelo India scheme, that there's a Kelo India Center, which we have in each of the districts of the country. Many of the districts have two of them, and Jammu Kashmir, for example, each district has five Kelo India centers. These are very bare minimum, grassroots level centers for the athletes to come and practice and sort of get a hang of the sport, get exposed to the professional training. Sports science, not so much, of course. I mean, sports science is there, but in very much in pockets, as we understand in the Indian scenario, and we are yet to sort of streamline the sciences part. But we've got around 148 Tailor India centers all over the country. 950 of them are operational. And that just gives a sense of uh, the numbers we are dealing with on a daily basis. For each of the center, we also have a past champion athlete, which we usually hire through the state government. The state government, like 36 state governments and UTs, the territories of the country, they'll just hire that past champion athlete to manage that Care India center. And that is the grassroots I'm talking about. Then we come on to the spy training centers. Then we go on to the National Center of Excellence, which we have around 22 operational at the moment. I'll just try to give you a brief of the Khelo India spans right now. And we started with Khelo India Youth Games, which is a national level game for or under 18, under 19 like competition at the national level. Then we started with the university games. Then we've come up with Khelo India Beach Games. This year we'll be starting with Khelo India Water Games, Northeast Games for the northeastern region of the country, Khelo India School Games. So we got a lot in the pipeline still coming through, which I believe because of our own, I would say, lack of human resources, we are not even able to fathom that we can pull off. And thanks to the leadership that we are now able to sort of visualize and basically practically conduct these gigs from this year on. And of course, uh, apart from the castles to the podiums, right? Apart from the target Olympic podium scheme, which we used to have only for the Olympics. So this year, last year, we also formed another, it's not a scheme, but a department called Target Asian Games Department. So we are also targeting specific competitions and having separate departments and dedicated teams of officers, coaches, and professionals to sort of have that very targeted approach toward the competition for each athlete. I hope I was giving you a brief of the whole scenario. I think I'm still sort of words because it's not too more to talk.
I think you really highlight the scale in terms of what Indian government is sort of invested in and is doing in terms of India and what the sporting opportunities are there, whether it's at grassroots or all the way to the podium. And certainly Abhinav Sharma India is a major, major part of that. I guess I therefore want to now ask Tathagata, because we heard sort of what, this sort of government policy outcome can lean to, and that, it's got a very positive outlook. But we've also seen in recent years that the private sector has started to really want to be involved, particularly, obviously in the high performance ecosystem, but also more broadly into infrastructure investment, talent development, and also sports academies like Inspire Institute of Sport. So I wanted to ask you how you see that institute, or indeed the rise of interest of the private sector, feeding into this broader government agenda.
Thanks for inviting me today, and of course to the Australia India Institute. Well, Lisa, this what Abhinav talked about was about scale. I would say that they will be feeding into high performance centers like us. Ours is much more targeted, and it's very clear that our objectives are more about getting a medal for India and at the Olympics. Asian Games, the Commonwealth Games, they are just milestones for us. Very important milestones, but everything is driven by the fact that if you have to have a paradigm shift in Indian sport, it will only come through international success. And we Indians love international success like anything, right? So that can only happen if you get a medal at the Olympics, and that's the goal. That's where our investments from the private sector is much more into these very niche targeted initiatives like high performance. Now in high performance you have these infrastructure investments, these are enablers. You also have infrastructure, then you have talent development, coach development is another area that we are aggressively working on. Of course you don't need infrastructure for that, but you need human resources for it. And that's where we see a lot of opportunities where Australia or international countries can help India as such. So for the private sector, it's also about the ROI at the end of the day, because we are also a business. We are driven by business objectives, because every buck that you spend or every minute that you spend every day towards that Olympic glory has to be measured when we are accountable for that. So that's where private sector will play a big role. It's more about, working on the creme de la creme and trying to win the gold. That's where we come from. It's very, very clear that our focus is only on that. Grassroots, yes, that's an important kind of a feeder to high performance sport. But that kind of scale which the government has, the capability and the capacity that they have, we don't have that. Right. So we have to be very, very clear that we need to work only in this particular space.
I mean, it sounds like a perfect complement in terms of government looking at scale, private sector looking very niche at that targeted goal of the milestones of getting a medal for India. And, I think that's what we all want to see, more medals for India and, of course, for Australia. But I think Australia didn't do too badly for last Olympics. But I know both of you have recently visited Australia. You're in Melbourne, the state of Victoria, as capital of Victoria. Obviously, as I shared in my introduction, it is a city known for its high performance sports and its high performance sports infrastructure. I wanted to unpack a little bit more about how you see how Australia can help India in terms of that. What did you gather, or at least from your visit to Melbourne, What are some of the insights that you think could really add value to what you are both trying to achieve here for India? Abhinav.
I think, as rightly said by, if I look at a panelist, Tathagata, that infrastructure for high performance is like a feel a long-term vision. It doesn't create high performance athletes per se, but yes, it has to be there, maintained, and has to be there first of all for them to practice or sort of see the best of field of play. Uh, that's what we got to see over there. Certainly, we got infra over here. We got some massive infrastructure over here. I saw the states you mentioned with the Olympics areas, right? Um, I mean, we recently had the national games conducted to say Uttarakhand, and I was shocked to see the kind of infrastructure there we have at BCG. It's massive, it's tremendously good, even in the remotest parts of the Kahal, like the state. I had no idea in myself. I mean, we cannot travel to all parts of the country and get to know what's happening. At least some sport event happened over there. And that was the first time when I could see such massive infrastructure developed over there. A similar infrastructure I saw in the state of Jharkhand, where in the 2011 National Games time, they have this sports village sort of thing. They call it large campus of around 300 acres, being maintained by the some coal subsidiary of the government of India. Only it's not managed. So we still have to find ways to sort of create the infra, manage it well, and that's where the corporate come in with picture. I don't know how to put it through, but maybe PDV updates other partnerships, and we've been talking about it since past probably 2 decades now, and we have seen a few of them coming through now very recently, through a couple of corporates. I cannot name them in terms of, I don't know whether they are comfortable with names coming out, but there are a lot of corporates coming out now, investing heavily, ready to put out the CSR fund, the corporate social responsibility fund. Rather, they are finding it difficult to put it in the right areas. And what I saw in Melbourne was, yes, of course, there's another factor to it, which is the the whole culture of sports for them is quite different, which I expect to happen over here very soon. Uh, Thanks to the mobile phones and the screens, we probably have like more screens in this room than humans right now. So about 700 million plus mobile phones in the country right now. In access, the amount of cricket people watch now, I don't know, for betting or whatever reasons they go, but they do watch it. And it has IPLs, and there's so many leagues coming up, small or big, in terms of where they get up all. The kind of viewership show is humongous. And that's the reason why I think we are slowly moving toward a nation wherein sports is becoming an integral part of the culture. Very, very fast, faster than it used to be earlier. And hence, uh, we can possibly have certain knowledge intake from Australia in terms of how to process this and how to make it more viable for the masses to sort of uh, take note of this and not only watch the sports on the screens, but also go to the stadium and watch them transit live. That's what the culture. Probably we'll get there very soon. That's my take on it.
Your take?
So, I mean, apart from what Abhinav talked about infrastructure, the model of managing the infrastructure was very interesting. Right? You had the government which owns the infrastructure over there, and they were also managing it using, say, the local federation or private parties. He talked about Uttarakhand. I was just there last week, and I saw the rowing and the kayak and canoe facility over there in Terry Dam. Unfortunately, it's just what been 5 or 6 months since the event got over, and it's in shambles. You know, it's in very bad shape. That's something that we can learn from Australia. Where how do you manage these high quality infrastructure that has been built for an event, and how do we make it sustaining? Second thing which I observed was the importance in research and universities in sports. Right, there's a lot of work happening in terms of capacity building. That's a big area of concern in India right now. And we working in the high performance space, we see this as a big challenge in finding quality resources who can work for, us. Because at a high performance level, you need top quality. You just cannot have, you know, uh, a system where you're just importing technologies or staff, etc. They can come, they can educate, but you still need quality Indians who can, take the story forward. It cannot be driven by international or foreign staff at the end of the day. And then third, which is of course a given, is technology. Kind of technology that Australia is building over there. And one piece which was very interesting for us, at least, was how AI has moved into sports technology, helping in churn out a lot of insights from so much of data that is there. I mean, we also struggle as a high performance institute of, making the best use of technology, the data that we collect every day, every training session, but we are not making much use of how do we develop or get insights which can help, make that difference in that 1 inch or 1 centimeter that will make a big difference towards the color of the medal or any medal, right? So infrastructure management, then research, and to develop capacity building. And then the third was technology. That really amazed me in terms of how Australia is driving that. At least in Melbourne, that's what I saw.
That's fantastic. Lots of insights from both of you from your visit to Melbourne. I wanted to now dive a bit deeper into our preview of our research that we've done at the Institute, which does look at a range of states and in India and engagement with Victoria. Sorry. So I wanted to ask you, in terms of one particular state is Karnataka, which Victoria has strong, deepening bilateral relationship with. So sorry, given recent initiatives around technology, innovation, where do you see the opportunities between Karnataka and Victoria in advancing high performance sport, particularly? Or are there other Indian states that you're aware of that Victoria could have significant potential in partnering with in terms of high performance sports?
Goya, at you, I was done. Can I say she?
Well, Karnataka, of course, we are present there. So we are doing a lot of work, of course, with our institute. Um, I think technology, obviously, Karnataka comes at the top of your mind because of Bangalore and its location over there. But I really feel that what needs to happen is that a lot of Australian technology companies need to come and explore setting up offices and develop Indian staff over here who can, service the needs of high performance institutes like us. I mean, we have a deal with the Australian company in terms of a athlete management system, but they are sitting somewhere in Australia. But in terms of servicing, we don't have that capacity. They don't have the capacity in India yet, like a full-fledged team. So that's one area. It may not be in the high quality sector in technology, but essentially to service. That's how we will learn the trade of essentially creating our own athlete management system. There are many companies back in Bangalore which are trying to do that, but they are far away from it because primarily they don't have the exposure to the kind of advanced systems that Australia has. And I think as part of creating an athlete management system, you need to have a kind of experimentation stage where you can experiment and see whether it's working or not. That's not available right now here, but it's possible to do that with institutes like ours. The other interesting thing that you talked about, Lisa, and you asked which are the other states, and when I saw that map, while you have your priority and the promising states, the whole of the Northeast is left completely untapped in that map. That's where majority of your Indian athletes come from. Northeast and of course Haryana and Delhi, you're there already. You're talking about it over there. But Punjab, that's what. So Haryana, Delhi was there in Punjab, but the Northeast is completely missing, and that's a hub of a lot of sporting activity. And what's happening with the Northeast, of course, the recent past after the government has changed at the central level, there's a huge focus on the Northeast. So sport can be a massive, push. You can drive a lot of things in the Northeast through sport. They love sport over there. They use that as a as a tool to change the lives of themselves. A lot of these athletes do that. We have, and that too in specific sports like judo. I mean, most of our judokas and international quality judokas come from the Northeast in Manipur, and they're hungry. They always come to us and they ask us for support, and we were like, okay, we are a high performance program. We cannot do grassroots. We'll try to help you as much as possible. But that's where maybe Melbourne and the government of India can play a huge role in kind of using scale to develop a huge talent pool in the Northeast. That's an area of then infrastructure building, capacity building there in the Northeast. So that's an area that needs to be really looked into for the Australian government and of course Melbourne and the Victorian government.
To add on to that, was recently at the Northeast Rising Summit, like last Saturday, and a couple of very interesting conversations we had. The government is actually focusing on the Northeastern region very much now, much more than ever. And as I said earlier, that we are also having a Northeast, India Northeastern Games. It's going to be a yearly thing hosted by the Honorable Minister, the households. Um, Apart from that, my personal experience of Northeast by traveling there, and I'm head sports program in the country, and that particular area I've been traveling to explore and understand what's the term reality and what does sports do to these women. So I mostly deal with under 16, under 12, very young women who are probably the more village. I'll let you one story. This uh, football league we conducted with the help of the All India Football Federation. It's called the Asma Cup. I mean, that's the short form for Hero India Women's League. The acronym stands for uh, Achieving Sports Milestone by Inspiring Real Interaction. So, yeah, that's the thing. And we are taking Asmita as the acronym for women empowerment through sports. That is the whole idea behind it. This particular league we conducted in Arunachal Pradesh. It's the least densely populated state of the country, you know. And we conducted this league 15 kilometers from the Chinese border, which is also a very, sensitive area, which is kept to the international uh, border context. We have that in that area. And this happened in Moningong district. And these women, for the first time, they played the football in a competitive manner, you know, and they played well. And that's what sort of they played really well. I mean, when I say well, and I'm a football player myself, and I've seen people play football in India, and yes, Northeastern region has football ingrained in their culture. And it's not just a game of football. Last year, we also took rugby to this same area to try and test. Again, we found out through the Rugby Federation, the National Sports Federation for Rugby in India, Rugby India, it's called, that it's a huge catchment area for new athletes. Hence, as rightly pointed out by Tathagata, that northeastern region particularly, um, due to it might be economical factors or social factors, most of the people over there are trying to find a government job through scores. That's the reality, the ground reality of it. But that being the case, sports is actually ingrained with their culture. Probably as the reason, or probably it's the way they think. It's very different from the rest of the country. And I mean, that should be one of the bogus areas also should be over there.
Uh, Tagata and Abhinav, you both very much outlined scale, potential, also a lot of opportunity. Um, of course, when we think about though where and how we want to advance high performance sport, uh, bringing you back to India's goal of the Olympics as well, and increasing that medal tally and all of that focus. Who should we really be focused on? I mean, we've got obviously the athletes, and we've talked a lot, I think, today about the athletes and the important, mutual benefit that this sort of focus and investment and collaboration could bring to athletes. But there's more than athletes involved when we talk about high sport. There's coaches, there's sports science research. In terms of both of your roles, how do you divide up where the focus should lie in terms of those sorts of different stakeholders that make up high performance sport? And is there an opportunity for us here, in Australia to sort of focus on more on one of those areas that the
I'll go for it. The focus always has to be the athletes. There's no doubt about it. Without the athletes, we are not going to achieve anything, right? It's the athlete who's going to perform at the end of the day. You can do whatever outside the field of play with coaches, etc. That has to translate with performance by the athlete on that day, which will make the difference between the medal. But where Australia can play a role, again, for me, I see it very clearly. There are two ways to do that. One is how do we have a long-term, uh, complete supply of quality athletes coming from India. That is where Australian companies, businesses can help us in India, whether it's the government or the private sector, to build capacities and create a model which is long-term and which is sustainable. The second short-term thing, which I was very interested in when I visited Melbourne, was the preparation for the 2032 Olympics, which is going to happen in Australia. That's just before India, right? Or whenever, if it does come to India, though. So that's that's an area where we see very short-term engagement opportunities, where institutes like ours, then the schemes from the government, where Indian teams can go and train in Australia. That's happening. That China is doing that already. I mean, China is far, far ahead. They are already talking about 2040, and their preparations are already aligned with that. India cannot be left behind if we really want to make a mark for in the 2036 Olympics. But before that, you have 2032. So that's where an opportunity lies, where Australian sports institutes, technology, etc., can open their doors, where India can send their teams, whether it's the Indian national teams or it is institutes like ours, where we can go and train there. We're already doing that, and I'll give an example. It's going to come out in the news very soon. We have already signed up an agreement with Korea as an institute, separate without the government's involvement, because we felt that okay, it's a direct relationship between two institutes, and we are going to use Korea as a stepping stone towards 2032 and 2028. But why can't Australia play a role there? You have some of the best institutes in high performance, like the Australian Institute of Sport, the Victoria Institute of Sport, etc., where those doors can be opened and where we can go and train. And that's very, very important for us to do that.
Yeah, to add on to that, I mean, I think he's covered almost all the points I was about to say. I said about the part where I'm planning to focus on sports sciences part, and I think we can work toward 2036 in terms of inter-university researchers. The pockets, the number of surgeons we have in the country right now in India is a huge number. But are they absolutely systemized? I mean, if an athlete wants to see a surgeon Doesn't he have to travel to Mumbai, Delhi, that we doing cities? Why can't he find that in probably smaller areas like or other B towns like smaller cities like Gopal or Indore? So that sort of a thing. It was systemizing our part and universities coming together for research can be the start of it to streamline this. And as I earlier said that we got a lot of corporates reaching in now, which I find that are not having the right frame of mind, or rather the knowledge as to how to, what role should they play in terms of creating high performance centers or athletes already 36. So in that case, I'm not looking at the funding. Funding is not a problem now. There's so many corporates in the country, in India, who are ready to fund. So many business houses. But the problem is the knowledge part, which have probably be sourced from these, inter-university researchers. And one more point is coaches. The training of coaches. The coaches need to be trained. They need to be empowered at level of international coaches, wherein there's a coach exchange program, or if the coaches go from here to Australia for probably a week, a 2 week. In terms of sports administrators also, for example, the both of us, I don't think there are many sports administrators. I don't think there are more than 1,000 sports administrators in the country. I don't know if I were to come to a figure, 85,000, if they call themselves. Why can't they sort of have a inter, you know, exchange of ideas and transference of knowledge from Australia as to how to administer sports, that sort of a thing. So these are 2 or 3 points which I have been thinking.
So, I mean, what he's talking about is at the end of the day, capacity building. Yeah, right. As you're talking about in whether it's in coaches, whether it's in sports science professionals, then you have administrators, etc. And what needs to happen is quality. We have a lot of quantity in the country for the, I mean, whether it's sports management courses, etc., but the quality is missing. How do you ensure that at a high performance level, you have to focus on the quality of what you're trying to do, whether it is these performance on the pitch has to all get developed through the coaches, the quality of the coaches, the quality of the administrators.
The autumn exchange programs really
They will help you, Abhinav, in terms of refreshing certain things, but you know the long term sustenance has to be there, and that is where Australia can play a huge role. The quality can be produced here. It's not that it can't be, but again, uh, the focus has to be long term here for the Australian institutes, whether it's Victoria, etc. Cannot be a short bust, just 1 or 2 years and while you take it long. Yeah.
yeah.
I think that we can say that about the Australia-India relationship as a whole. It's a long-term journey, I think, and I think it's timely that we're having this conversation because we're actually at the 5-year anniversary of Australia and India signing a comprehensive strategic partnership, which is what really elevated our relationship to such a more closer and more impactful level across a range of fields. And of course, what we're talking about today is a field that has so much more potential for both of our two countries to engage each other on. And Victoria be the home state, I would say, in terms of real high performance sport that can really deliver and support India in that way, and vice versa, have India engage with Victoria on the same. Your insights, gentlemen, have been incredibly valuable, not only to hear it from you both today, but also through the role you've played in feeding into our research, because we're here today, of course, to sort of preview, launch our research report, which will be coming out in the month ahead, which really goes deeper into what both of you have been sharing with us so that we can actually provide both the Indian governments at state level and nationally, and of course, Victorian government with those those nuggets that you talked about, those quality nuggets that we need to take the relationship forward to achieve high performance sport. So thank you so much to Tathagata Mukherjee and to Abhinav Sharma. You've both been incredibly insightful, and I very much thank you for your insights and look forward to India hosting the 2036 Olympics after Australia into the future. I don't want to think how old we'll be that hopefully we'll all still be playing sport, watching sport and engaging on the successes of India and Australia at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you.